So, welcome to Hult's Virtual Skills Lab. In these difficult times, we're pleased to be able to bring you a series where we explore the topics affecting society and business today. For those who are joining a Hult event for the first time, I just want to give you a little bit of background about us. Hult have designed a school that looks to the future by focusing on developing your leadership skills, challenging you with a future-orientated curriculum, and building a global perspective that only first-hand experience can bring. We currently offer an undergraduate program, 5 specialist one-year master's programs, a one-year global MBA, and a uniquely flexible part-time executive MBA. More information on all our programs and the upcoming scholarship deadline can be found at hult.edu. So this afternoon, we're joined by Hult Professor Terence Tetz to explore 5 latest trends in the business of artificial intelligence. Now, before we begin, I just want to give a little bit of housekeeping. The webinar will last about 20 minutes to 30 minutes in total, but we will have time for questions at the end. A recording of the webinar will also be sent out to everybody post the event, so in the next couple of days. If you wish to ask a question, please use the Q&A box at the bottom. It should be either at the bottom or at the top of your screen, and then we'll be able to organise questions and make sure Terence is able to answer these at the end. So I would now like to hand over to Terence.
Well, thank you very, very much, Lisa, and thank you very, very much to all of you to spend the time with us. My name is Terence T, and I'm a professor at Hult. And on top of that, I am a co-founder and executive director of a company called Nexus Frontier Tech. I am so Nexus Frontier Tech is a company that focuses on AI. So what I'm going to bring you today is 5 trends that I observed, from the battlefront, to share with you, what are the latest business developments in this very field. I guess I need, the reason why I'm mentioning my company was simply because at Hult, what we intend to do is to rely less on academic research, but more bring in the actual practical knowledge into the classroom. And so, this is the reason why I'm here, and I'm very pleased that you can actually join us. I know I'm you must have spent a lot of time in front of the screens already, especially if it is the end of the day. So so what I'm going to do is I'll spend about 20 minutes time to go through the 5 trends that share with some ideas with you, and then I will try to answer as many questions as I possibly can with in the remaining time. What I've learned this morning was and the afternoon earlier sessions is that there are lots and lots of questions. So even though if I in the end won't be able to actually get through all the questions, please still send them over, because it might be helpful to everyone here, especially the person who of course it's posing the question in the first place. So let me actually get onto the actual presentation and talk about the trends that we are seeing right now. Okay, so first thing first, the first trend that I observe is this. Even though lots of people are talking about AI, and the companies are using AI, it goes every day. We can't actually get through get through a single day, at least in the pre-virus, pandemic time. Every day we hear how this and that company are actually using AI. The actuality is that companies have been very, very slow in taking up artificial intelligence. And we heard that, financial services, they are probably the most ripe for to take on AI. But the fact is that even financial services have been very, very slow when it comes to taking up this very technology. And there are basically a number of reasons for that. The first one is that, don't forget, AI is only a technology. What really makes AI work is the fact that you need workflows and processes. The stuff that goes around the technology. You or companies would actually have to invest a lot of time and resources in order to sometimes modify, if not completely redesign the workflows in order to accommodate for the AI technology so that you can actually bring out the benefits of technologies. Doing that, as it turned out, was very, very difficult. Two is the fact that the return on investment, like for AI, is not always there. All right. Now, usually when you start any technology, not just AI, what you would do is you start with something called POC, proof of concepts. Proof of concepts, it's just another term to describe, like a prototype. And so companies invest in prototypes. That's good. The problem is that a lot of companies, they actually stop going further beyond or going beyond the POCs. And the reason a lot of the time was simple. The POCs, yes, it's good. It shows you like the technology works. But when it comes to really actually bringing it into the business, the return a lot of time is not there, given the amount of investment you would need to put in. Now, so because like the investment, if you think about it, includes both like a financial and a lot of the other corporate resources. So all in all, it's not a small amount. Okay. And also, don't forget, returns usually, there may be long-term return, but a lot of the time when people measure success of projects, you tend to be very, very short-term. And this is the reason why, in order for any company, we recommend to any company, in order to improve the ROI, what you want to do is to use AI for cost savings, okay? And not necessarily revenue. So we always tell our clients to refrain from doing all this sexy stuff. Putting AI to interact with your customers to improve your customers' experience. The reason why we ask them not to do it, at least with the first project, is that if let's say you put in the technology and the revenue goes up, is it because the revenue does the revenue go up because of the technology you put in place, or it is simply the macroeconomic environment improving? The market actually is it improves. We don't know. It's difficult to say. Whereas if you were to put AI into the cost saving bit, you know how much money you have actually saved, and therefore you can compare that with the investment that you put in the tech, that you put in, to deploy the technology. There's a third reason, and the third reason is that there are most of the data out there right now we are seeing is actually unstructured. What does it mean? Well, basically unstructured. A study reviews that about 80% of the data out there is unstructured. So what is unstructured data? Let me tell you what structured data is. Structured data is basically data that is already been cleaned and they're already sitting on the database, ready to be used by whatever system. Unstructured data, the remaining 80%, are basically data that exists in the form of documents, our chat apps, emails. The data is the fact is this: the documents are there, the emails are there, but what we lack is the ability to extract the data from these documents. So if you think about it, image recognitions, yes, video, you can actually do that. But what you still need to do is to actually extract these unstructured data and put it, turn it into data. Don't forget, AI actually needs a structured data in order to be trained, most of the time anyway. All right. So without the data being structured, at least converted into structured data, it is hard to actually get AI to be going. So that's another reason why the deployment of AI is actually much slower than many like to believe. At the same time, media tends to covered, if you like, the power of AI. ultimately, what we need to understand is this: AI is nothing more than algorithms. And what is algorithm? It's basically x plus y equals z. It is nothing more than a formula. Now think about it. If this is all AI is, it is basically just calculations, computation. What AI can actually do is therefore very, very, very limited. AI works best in a setting when it is well defined, i.e. you can actually define it. You know exactly what it is. Explicit, okay? And well-defined, explicit, and it is very, very narrow. Because if you were to train a machine to do one task, what that machine can really do is to do that one task. That's it. It cannot do other tasks, okay? So if you were to train the machine to recognize a picture, whether it is a dog or not, the machines will never be able to tell you whether it is a dog or a cat. The most the machine can do is to tell you whether it is a dog or no dog, okay? So now, in that sense, what it means is this: if AI is very, very narrow, the use of AI therefore must be very narrow as well, at least in business terms, and hence AI is far more promising as a technology when it comes to automation, especially those tasks that are repetitive and standardized. Think about this. Any task that is repetitive, standardized means that they are actually explicit. You know what it's like, what the whole process is like. You can well define it, and just as important, usually these tasks are human labor intensive, which means one, they're expensive, costly to run, and two, they make a lot of mistake. So if we can actually automate these tasks, that's what we call intelligent automation, and remove the human elements in the process. This, I believe, is where AI is really making the most contribution. This actually jives with our earlier conversation. The fact is that if you want to all these standardized routine operations, they're usually the back end stuff, the back end of a business, and hence AI can actually make a contribution on the back end improvements. The third element that I want to actually draw on the trend is the fact that we will probably need more and more oversight and governance on the technology itself. All right. If you take a look at this graph, what you will at this chart, what you will see is that the machines actually identify the man within this picture as a woman. And the reason why this is happening is simple, because when the scientist was training this machine, the pictures with featuring kitchens usually would have a woman in it. And as a result, what we can see is that if we do not know that we are actually having a bias, when we're looking at the input, the machines, once actually process the data, it will only amplify the bias that we are feeding in, okay? Now, I have to say, data scientists do not do it deliberately. It is a lot of the time, it is subconsciously we're doing it. Let me actually ask you a question, all right? So here is a story. A father and a son, both of them were in the car and they got into a car accident. The father died immediately on the scene. The son was actually rushed. Was alive, was in a very critical condition and was immediately rushed into the hospital. When the surgeon came into the room and saw the son lying on the table, the first thing the surgeon said was, "I cannot operate on him. He is my son." Now, what is the problem with this story? I'll give you 3 seconds. The problem is that the surgeon is the mother. Now, if you are like most of us, you know, I don't know about you, but like in my, at least for me, it didn't occur to me. And the reason was simple, because we tend to associate doctors as men or like and nurses as women. The bias is actually built in us, and you know we need to be very, very careful, and therefore we need, you know, like the governance is very, very important. Trend number 4 is this. There will be more and more people talking about the so-called explainable AI. So what exactly is explainable AI? Let me actually draw a continuum. So as you may know, one of the most critical like success like a factor, you know, like a key success factor of like determining whether an like a model is good or not is accuracy. So the fact is this, you know, if you are using a model and the model is highly accurate, that model is deemed to be very powerful, like much more power, like a most powerful, and it will be something that is useful. Now, and if you want to achieve like a very, very high accuracy, you probably need to use a technique called deep learning, something probably I'm sure you have actually heard of. What deep learning is, you know, in one sentence, is you are using a huge, like a lot of computational layers, like to put it in a single machine, and then use the machines to actually predict, you know, like with the greatest possible accuracy. So you're basically using, you know, number crunching like heavily in order to to improve the probability of guessing the right outcome. On the other hand, you'll be surprised to hear that a lot of the so-called AI system out there is nothing more than the good old rule-based system, i.e. if-then statement. All right. Now, as you can imagine, if-then statement is something that is a lot less technologically advanced, if you like, or like a computationally advanced as deep learning. But the good news about like rule-based is that you can actually explain how the machine actually get from the input to the output. Whereas in deep learning, we get to see the input, the data you put into the machines, and you get to see the output, what the machines actually come up with. But what we don't know is what as how the machines actually process it, got to the output. And this is what people call black box. You probably have heard of it. You know, machines like AI a lot of the time involves a lot of black box. And black box, in short, means we just don't know how the machines actually get to the answers. And the problem then is that with black box, we cannot explain. So we cannot explain how it actually got there, right? So XAI, short for explainable AI, is something that is going to be more and more important. Now, so in some cases, explainable, we need to make sure that AI is explainable. So for instance, if we're going to use AI to determine someone's social credit scores, or even our debt capacity, or our ability to pay back the loans, we need to make sure that the AI is explainable. Okay, we need to know exactly how an AI got to the results or decisions that it actually came up with. On the other hand, there are certain circumstances where we don't care about explainability at all. Namely, simply because the result, whatever the result the machines actually come up with, it is insignificant. So one example would be when you actually go and text. Okay, when you type on your mobile phone, your phones will actually provide you with a recommendation, right? So to help you to complete the sentence. But if if your mobile phones give you the wrong recommendation, is it devastating? No. Is it even hurting? No. Does it do any damage to you? No. So in that case, we don't need to worry about, whether some machines is actually whether the model is actually explainable or not. But what we do need to know is, for those things that are truly important, we social, people's livelihood, we do need to make sure that the machines, we need to understand how the machines got to the decision. The last point is this. AI is not just about AI models. I think what is also critical and very, very few people have been talking about is what people call AI ops, which stands for AI operations, or simply, how do you operationalize AI? What does it mean? What it means is this. If you think about, if you consider AI, let's say you have a very, very powerful AI model, okay? It is like a car engine, of a performance car, like a Porsche or even a Ferrari, right? Just with the Ferrari engine or Porsche engine, it won't get you to from point A to point B, in style. What you need is the rest of the car. Same thing here. What AI, in order for AI to work, you cannot simply just have an AI model. What you need is the surrounding environment. So if you look at the slide right now, the boxes in white, they are the actual AI models elements. But in order for AI to work or to bring out the true benefits and turn the AI, the power of AI into business propositions, you do need to have the rest of the system, which we called production environment. And production environment, includes thinking about a system that is not crashable, that allows models to be upgraded and but business as usual, that allows us to actually change the model, upgrade the models, that allows us for to go on monitoring it, that allows it to pump out data in the form of dashboards. In short, AI is a lot more than what than just models. So ultimately, and what what we have what we are seeing is this. There is the tech side of AI, and the people who work on it are all data scientists, system engineers. There are all of them. Okay. At the same time, we are looking at businesses. The problem here is this. A lot of the business people don't understand technologies or fail to actually appreciate the implications and ramifications of technologies. At the same time, what we also see is that tech people are unable to explain the value and the benefits, and more importantly, the downside of technologies. So there seems to be a gap in between. And what I think is important for you, whoever, you who are listening to this webinar, there is a huge gap that that requires people to understand both the business, both business and technologies. And I'm very, very I would very, very much encourage all of you, whether you're joining Hult or not, to actually operate in this very space. Arm yourself with the right business skills and arm yourself with the knowledge in technologies, because ultimately going forward, this space, which is basically still it's a huge gap so far as I can see, is ready, is calling, demanding, shouting at people, smiling at you effectively, for you to actually come in and fill it. And I'm really hopeful that, this seminar actually gives you some idea as to, what AI is about, where it is going. And the fact is that, there is a huge demand for business people to be fluent in the technology language as well. Okay. So now I'm going to actually answer some, try to answer some questions. Let me actually go back to the screen and look at the Q&A, and so I'll try to answer the question. So here we go. So can AI be used to predict the stock's volatility and rough value based on news, past events, and or human behavior? Great question, Thomas. Thank you very, very much. The answer is yes, and I know that there are certain hedge fund companies they are they are using it, which I think it's probably a very, very good use of AI. The problem, I can see two problems here. One is that human behavior. How do you actually, have got the input? What kind of inputs do you put into the machines in order for the machines to actually make predictions on the human behavior? That is going to be very, very difficult. I'm not saying that it is impossible, but but it will be difficult to actually get a very eclectic, wide range of data set of showing human behavior. So I don't know how to go about doing it, but in theory, yes. That is also assuming that we can actually define human behavior, or the human behavior we want to understand. The second problem I have got with AI doing this is this. What you want to do is to train the AI to look at volatilities. That's great, but you do need to have data from the past. But if you were to feed the historical data into the machines, you are essentially assuming that the future is going to be a repeat of the past. Is it always the case? I don't know. And this is one of the reasons why, me and my colleagues, we always argue that AI will never ever predict a female president, for the US, in the US. And the reason, simple, because there's never any data on that. And why, therefore, would the machines be coming up with, that prediction? I hope I understand that question. I answered that question. So the next question is, what do you think is going to happen, to all the workers whose jobs are displaced by AI, structural unemployment? So the quick answer was this: me and my colleague actually wrote a book, and I am not supposed to be doing any marketing, but here am I doing marketing, and we argue the following fact: if machine is only can only take on a very narrow job, right? A very narrow task. What all it can do is to actually replace something that is very narrow, right? And therefore, unless your job consists of only one task, you would not be, I don't think your job will be eliminated as such. So I am not worried about AI taking the jobs of the of people, unless you are really just doing one repeated standardized task. But what I can see is that part of your jobs will actually disappear as a result. Okay. So the next question I have got is, can you actually give an estimate timeline on when business and technologies gap will potentially close? Good question. I think the timeline, right? I think it will be another at least 5 years for two reasons. One is this: we need to actually, for a lot of the senior staff, senior executives, they're not particularly keen when it comes to adoption of AI. They talk a lot about taking on AI, deploying AI, but a lot of the time they're not actually they're not particularly keen. All right, so what needs to happen is that the middle management, who are actually a lot more interested in AI, and we need to actually wait for them to actually move up. That's one reason. The second reason is that technology is moving very, very quickly, and so we are going to see people unless people are really taking the initiative to run as fast as technology goes, there will never be enough people to actually meet the demand. So I think within the next 5 years, we are going to see, like a shortage or a gap in between. So now is the time for you to run and dive into it. That's what I think everyone should be. So we've got Philippe, who was my students way back in 2015. And so what kind of right set of knowledge and skills do you need? I think the key here is this, there is no such thing as right things and right skills and knowledge. I think it's more like right attitude and initiative. What I would suggest is everyone who is actually willing to listen to me is this. They should all be trying to read as widely as possible, because I believe that going forward, there are lots and lots of opportunities, but there's nothing new under the sun. So in order to actually find the new opportunities, one needs to know how and when and to connect the dots. But if you don't read, if we don't know, or if we don't read widely and substantially, we will never be able to find out where the dots are. So, read widely, keep reading about technologies, because technologies are changing. And this is basically how I personally keep the learning going. It is a never-ending story, but I do believe that if you are running fast enough, you will be able to be constantly staying ahead of the curve, which is something that I personally am trying to do. So we've got another question here. What's the belief of the rise of quantum computing with AI? Good question. So essentially, there are two technologies, all right? To be quantum computing is just another way to get around with our current limit in terms of computing power. Before writing the AI Republic, my partner and I, Marcus Rosito, wrote a book on megatrends. And in it, we argue that one of the things that is that we see stopping is the so-called oh gosh, all of a sudden it escaped the head, my head. Basically, it says every 2 years, every 18 months, we will see our computing power going doubling. All of a sudden, it's just a term Moore's law. Yeah, we see the computing power increase continuously and doubling every 18 months, and the price of computing chip power remains exactly remain flat. It has come to an end for one simple reason, because computer chips these days have reached the physical limit of us putting more and more transistor on the same chip. So between a new type of chips would actually have to be developed, and a new approach to computing, i.e. quantum computing, actually has been pushed forward, has been at least proposed. What we will see again, if we have got quantum computing, which I think is still way before we see it, is that it will gigantically improve our computing power, our computational ability. But let's not forget, computation is computation is computation. It will probably make AI, a lot faster in getting to the result, but it is not going to actually necessarily broaden AI's ability, or at least go beyond the current recipe of using algorithms. So we'll likely see a greater accuracy, greater use, but when it comes to using AI to to do science fiction stuff, I think we're still a very, very long way to go. Right, what is the difference between strong AI and weak AI? That's the next question. Very clearly easy. Strong AI, Terminator stuff. You can use AI that has got a consciousness, the AI that can actually do a lot of things human. It's very Westworld stuff, right? Weak AI is basically, it's also called narrow AI. And the reason why narrow AI is called narrow AI is exactly what we were talking about before. It can only achieve a very narrowly defined task. So at the moment, all the AI we are seeing is nothing more than weak AI. When are we going to see strong AI? Different people have different views. if I were to talk to the geeks in my company, they will be laughing at me, if I even mention like a strong AI, because like they simply don't believe that in the very near future we will be seeing it. Right. Another question: how could AI be used in hospitality services, namely hotels, restaurants, and etc.? Good question. I think we are probably not going to see AI to be used in the customer experience side. Okay. I am probably a skeptic when it comes to using AI as like in customer facing activities. So the other day, over the weekend, I went into the panic mode because as a result of the pandemic, we all need to have internet, and my internet simply just broke down. So I called up Vodafone and like try to get the problem sorted out. And of course, Vodafone offered me a digital assistant on the phone, which sounds great. But when I described the problem to the digital assistant came back and say, okay, let us try again. Is your problem A, related to broadband, or B, related to something else? In this, the reason why I mention it is simple, because I don't think machines these days is actually capable of handling the customers requests or customers experience. The most it can do, right, is not interfacing with the customers, but rather you would want to use the AI in the back end to facilitate, to help the customers to make decisions or provide them with recommendations. That's that's the most, I think you can do. I'll give you an example. A friend of mine who works at American Express. American Express bought a company, an AI company that looks like that does what they call it, concierge. So what they do is this: if you are an American Express card holder, you can actually use the concierge service and say, "Oh, hi, I'm actually in London. This is a place that I'm visiting, and I would like to take my client out for a dinner. Where should I go? Because I don't know anything. I'm not familiar with this town." What American Express then would do is to use your spending pattern, your behavior, in the past, compared to those who have got similar spending data and behavior, and then they've tried to figure out which restaurants, looking at the transaction records, and see which restaurants the similar customers have been to, and then they make the recommendation. In other words, what this what AI is doing for American Express is not necessarily customer facing. All it is doing is processing the backend data and come up with something that helps make recommendations to the customers. It is very different. I notice making recommendations and suggestions is very, very different than actually helping customers to solve a problem. I think it is relatively difficult to use AI to solve problems that emerge from the customer side, simply because there's such a huge variety of them. Right, next questions. I'll try to actually get through as many questions as possible in the next 5 minutes. So how far could AI be used in medical field? The answer is, I think there is quite a bit that AI can actually be used in the medical field. So here is a well-known and encouraging study. Someone was in MIT actually use AI to look at X-rays on cancer, on cancer cell, right? Of whether to detect whether there is cancer existing or not. AI could do it with 93% accuracy. If you were to actually pass it on to specialists, the same X-ray for specialists to pick up, to look at, the accuracy is actually 95%, right? So in this case, humans are much better at detecting, whether there is cancer or not. But the good news here is this: when you're using both AI and humans, the accuracy immediately goes up, like accuracy immediately goes up to 98%. What is the story, the moral of the story, here is that AI in itself is not good enough. All what you should do, what we always should be thinking of is how to actually get humans to work with AI. And again, going back to the earlier hospitality questions, the key is not to actually just dump your customers like in front of machines or dump the machines on your customers. The key is to how to actually think about the human and machines collaborations, what kind of propositions and what kind of new ideas you can come up with. So do you think of applying AI in a field from a guy who is away from the field be efficient, who is away from that field will be efficient? I'm terribly sorry, I've got no clue what your question is about. I'm going to move on to the next one. What do you suggest professional about the skills to be acquired and remain AI enabled market? How to be competitive in AI and machine? Okay, so this is a great question. What do you need to do? You basically have got two options. One is you go down to the coding route. Okay, you know how to do coding, and you can turn yourself into a data scientist who can actually speak the business language. And I think if you are interested in going down that route, congratulations, you are still, you would be, there is still a lot of businesses to be had. Alternatively, you can also go down the route of doing system engineering, development ops, and continuous improvement, continuous development, CI/CD, right? But these are all technical stuff. If you are a business professional, like me, the way to do it is to be able to, one, understand how technology works. So go down the route of, at least you don't have to be able to, you don't need to be able to build AI, but you do need to know how AI actually works or the latest technologies work. And B, read about how AI is actually used in in the different places. Look at the use cases, analyze them, consider them. It helps to broaden the idea, or broaden the mind. And this, I believe, is the best way to for you to run faster than the curve, than the current development. And this is, I think, one way for us to actually stay relevant in in this a market space. So how do you see the relationship of ethics and AI at in the future? The fact is this: ethics is going to play a critical role, with AI. The problem here is this: who is going to monitor or or even do something about it? If you look at the way AI is developed, right, in the US, all the technologies, including AI, is actually done by the big private companies, Google, Apple's alike, right? Now, do they actually worry about ethics? I'm not going to answer that question, okay? At the same time, in China, another AI superpower is all governments controlled and government driven at the very least. Again, the question here is, what kind of ethics, how would they define ethics? So in the middle, we have got us here in Europe, and we are a lot more interested in protecting our data privacy and the ethical issues. But then at the same time, we are losing out in this AI game. So we are seeing a trade-off here. If you care about ethics, you won't be able to have your technologies moving quickly. But if you care about technology, pushing the technological frontiers, you will probably have to overlook the issues of ethics. It is a hard one, and unfortunately, I don't think you can actually have a win-win situation here. But it is a choice that companies will have to make. Very quickly, I will try to actually answer 3 more questions. What roles of the in AI, especially in imaging, in near future, long-term prospects, oversight? I think I've actually, this is questions, it's about healthcare. I think I have actually answered that. I think in the healthcare space, image recognition would actually help a lot. Because there is a second opinion you can use AI as a second opinion to read X-rays and and scans. At the same time, I think one of the key contribution of AI in the healthcare space is to use AI to deal with the documents back end, right? And because like if you can save a lot of money from the efficiency operations of health organizations, it would already be helping a lot. You can spend a lot more money on the on the healthcare stuff rather than the processing stuff. So I think we need to make sure that when we're talking about healthcare, it is not only the sexy stuff, but also the most boring stuff. And once again, I like to repeat this. AI is best to use for something that is boring and humans find it difficult to do and boring to do. The next question is about buying a book, a book. Go to Amazon, you'll be able to find the different formats. So 2 more questions. I'll try. This one comes from Amir, and it's AI can decrease the cost of prediction and predict the future easily. What happened to the stock market? When it comes to using AI to predict the stock, you have to actually use a lot of training data, and the training data inevitably reflect the past. So would AI be able to predict the world, the new normal after a coronavirus? I don't know, because there is no historical data that results from the pandemic. So I don't know. Maybe there is, maybe there is not. But then, even if you can actually go and find that set of data to input in, don't forget the fact that you're picking that data set, you are already introducing bias. And is your bias correct or leading you down the wrong road? It's very, very difficult to tell. Right, so how much AI can be useful in predicting crimes and preventing them? So this is lots of companies have been using AI for crime fighting. The problem leads to one of the earlier problems we were actually discussing, bias. Because if you were to use historical data, people of of a specific economic group, they will inevitably commit a higher rate of crimes. Okay, so and therefore when you use AI to predict the outcome, the AI will bias against this group simply because this is how it works. Okay, so I'll give you an example. Women tend to commit less murder than men. So I think it's I think 93% of the data, 93% of the murder homicide case in the world is committed by men, with the remaining 7 done by women. If you were to use AI to decide whether a man or a person has committed a murder, the machines would inevitably favor women because there are fewer women who actually committed the crime. So it is with ethical issues like this, it's very, very difficult for for us to use AI to consider it. It is if not downright dangerous. I'm afraid that I won't be able to cover the remaining questions. There are quite a lot of them, but I wish I had more time. But I think I have to bring it to a close because I've been talking for 50 minutes, and I think it is way too much of a punishment. This is the type of punishment I will not even push upon my worst enemy. So thank you so much for all the questions. Thank you very, very much for taking the time to actually listening to me, and I'll pass it on to Lisa now. Thank you.
Such a hot topic, just too many questions, Terence. It's a great problem to have.
Yeah, I know, but unfortunately, it is what it is.
Okay, great. So thank you so much, Terence. That was brilliant. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. As we said before, a recording of this will also be sent out in the follow-up email in the coming days. If you'd like more information on our courses, please make sure to visit hult.edu. And if you feel it was useful, we have another number of upcoming webinars happening. The next one being on Friday with Professor Ali Fennick, who will be discussing the psychology of panic buying. Please see hult.edu/events to be able to register for it. It's up 2 time zones, so hopefully one will be good for you. And so that's all from us today. Thank you so much for the presentation, Terence. And thank you everybody for joining us. Hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Take care. All the best. Bye-bye. Thank you.